Welcome to another deep dive, and this time we're diving headfirst into Jane Eyre. I'm so excited to explore this classic with you.
It's always a good time to revisit the classics.
It really is. And what makes this deep dive extra special is that you provided us with excerpts from the novel itself.
Getting right to the source material.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to be experiencing Jane's world directly through her words, which I find so intriguing.
I agree. You know, there's something about hearing a story unfold in the protagonist's own voice that just pulls you in.
It's true. It's like you're right there with them, living through every experience.
Exactly. And with Jane Eyre, that voice is so powerful and distinct, especially for a novel written in the Victorian era.
It really is. And as we embark on this deep dive, I thought we could start with the dedication Brontë wrote to William Makepeace Thackeray.
Yeah.
She praised him so highly, even going as far as comparing him to Fielding.
Yeah, it's a bold move, isn't it?
Uh,
And I think that comparison is so telling. It gives us a glimpse into Bronte's own literary values.
Oh, absolutely. She clearly admires Thackeray's wit and social commentary, but also his ability to create characters with depth and complexity, something she, of course, does masterfully in Jane Eyre.
Exactly. It's almost as if she's signaling to us, the readers, that we're about to enter a story that dives deep into the complexities of human nature.
Ooh, I love that. A signal to the reader, a literary foreshadowing. And speaking of complex characters, let's move on to Jane's childhood at Gateshead. Those early chapters are so vivid and, honestly, quite brutal.
Yeah, no sugarcoating there. Bronte doesn't shy away from depicting the harsh realities of Jane's life as an orphan raised by her unloving aunt, Mrs. Reed.
Not at all. And that sense of emotional isolation is amplified, I think, in that chilling description of the Red Room.
Oh, absolutely. The Red Room scene is so powerful. The way Bronte describes the heavy curtains, the eerie silence, the vacant majesty of the bed.
Ugh, it gives me chills just thinking about it. It's like Jane's imprisoned in this space that reflects her own powerlessness.
Exactly. It's a symbol of the constraints placed upon her, both physically and emotionally.
And, of course, she's subjected to cruelty within those constraints, particularly from John Reed, her cousin.
And it's in that confrontation with John that we see the first glimmer of Jane's fierce spirit. Even as a child, she refuses to be a victim.
Yes, she fights back, defending herself against his physical and verbal abuse. It's a crucial moment in her development.
I agree. It reveals her innate sense of justice and her determination to assert her own agency, even when facing those overwhelming power dynamics.
Absolutely. And those power dynamics are on full display in the scene where Mrs. Reed brings in Mr. Brocklehurst to interview Jane about attending Lowood Institution.
Oh, that's a tough scene. It's just heartbreaking to witness Mrs. Reed deliberately painting Jane as a liar and a troublemaker, essentially trying to sabotage her future.
And what's interesting? Bronte uses the imagery of the garden to mirror Jane's emotional state during that interview.
Oh, how so?
Well, the garden was once a source of solace for Jane, but in that moment, it's described as frosty and desolate, which perfectly reflects the chill Mrs. Reed has cast over your hopes for a better life.
That's so insightful. I love how Bronte uses these subtle details to add depth and meaning to her storytelling.
It's brilliant, and her use of imagery is just so striking throughout the novel. Those descriptions of the natural world often seem to echo Jane's internal landscape.
It's like the world around her reflects her inner turmoil.
Exactly. Which brings us to Lowood Institution itself. What a stark and unforgiving environment.
It really is. Lowood represents those harsh realities faced by so many impoverished girls in Victorian England, and Bronte doesn't shy away from depicting those realities. The meager meals, the rigid discipline, the constant threat of illness, even the weather seems to conspire against them, with that beautiful May sunshine outside contrasting sharply with the suffering within the school walls.
It's such a powerful contrast. And yet, even amidst that hardship, Jane forms this incredible connection with Helen Burns. Their friendship is just so moving, and Helen's influence on Jane is profound.
Helen embodies this spiritual resilience that Jane clearly admires. She teaches Jane to find solace in knowledge, to forgive those who wrong her, and to cultivate an inner strength that transcends her circumstances.
Their conversations are just so insightful, and they stay with you long after you finish the book.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when Helen tells Jane, "It is not violence that best overcomes hate, nor vengeance that most certainly heals injury."
Oh, that's such a powerful quote. And it really resonates with Jane, shaping her moral compass throughout the story.
It does. And then, of course, there's that moment of vindication when Jane is finally cleared of Mrs. Reed's accusations.
Yes, it's a turning point for her.
It really is. It's like a weight has been lifted from her spirit. And with that newfound freedom, she's able to leave Lowood and start a new chapter in her life, a chapter that leads her to Thornfield Hall and that enigmatic Mr. Rochester. But I think we'll save that part of the journey for part 2 of our deep dive.
Definitely a story for next time.
Until then.
Bye. So last time, we left Jane at a crossroads, ready for a fresh start. And Thornfield Hall is quite the start, with its imposing architecture and whispers of mystery.
It's like stepping right into a Brontë novel. Even the name Thornfield evokes a sense of both grandeur and something a bit ominous, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And Bronte's descriptions definitely play into that atmosphere, don't you think? Remember those battlements around the top, that rookery in the background, all those ancient thorn trees guarding the grounds?
That's also perfectly Gothic. It definitely sets the stage for something intriguing, maybe even a bit dangerous.
For sure. And their first encounter is anything but ordinary. Jane, on her solitary walk, comes face to face with a man thrown from his horse.
And who should it be but Mr. Rochester himself?
Talk about a dramatic entrance. But what strikes me is that Jane doesn't seem intimidated, even though he's quite gruff and dismissive.
Right. She offers help, even questions him about his injury. There's this immediate spark of defiance in her, a refusal to be cowed by his brooding demeanor.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes about their connection. Right from the start, there's this sense of equality, a meeting of minds that goes beyond those rigid social conventions.
I totally agree. And it's even more apparent when Jane returns to Thornfield as the governess. Their conversations are full of intellectual sparring, witty banter, a genuine curiosity about each other's perspectives.
And that scene where she shares her drawings with him, his critique is so blunt.
Harsh even.
But you can sense a real respect for her talent and appreciation for her unique vision, right?
It's like he sees beyond the role of governess to that passionate, creative woman underneath. He challenges her in a way no one else has, pushing her to really think critically, to articulate her own artistic expression.
He sees her potential.
He does. But this burgeoning connection is disrupted by the arrival of Blanche Ingram. And talk about a contrast. Blanche is everything Jane is not. Beautiful, wealthy, and she has all the social graces.
She seems like the perfect match for a man like Rochester, at least on the surface.
And Jane is definitely aware of this. You can feel her insecurities rising, her doubts about her own worth, especially as Blanche effortlessly commands attention.
It's a cruel dynamic for sure, and Brontë doesn't let us forget it. But amidst all this social maneuvering, there's this underlying sense of unease. All those strange events at Thornfield. The fire in Rochester's room, the attack on Mason, the unsettling presence of Grace Poole.
It's like something's lurking beneath the surface of all that grandeur, some secret waiting to be revealed.
Those scenes are so well crafted, building suspense, creating this sense of foreboding.
And then, of course, we have that incredible scene with the gypsy fortune teller.
Oh, that's a classic. Such a brilliant twist, revealing Rochester's manipulative side as he's disguised, trying to get a glimpse into Jane's feelings.
I remember being completely shocked when his identity was revealed. It really casts him in a new light, forcing Jane and us as readers to question everything we thought we knew about him.
It's a turning point, and it sets the stage for that ultimate climax of their relationship, the interrupted wedding.
Talk about a heart-stopping moment. Just as they're about to say their vows, the truth about his previous marriage to Bertha Mason comes out.
Such a devastating revelation, and Jane's response is so powerful. Even though she's in love with Rochester, she refuses to compromise her principles.
She walks away, asserting her own dignity and independence.
It's a pivotal moment in her journey of self-discovery. She's not that timid girl from Gateshead anymore. She's a woman of strength, making difficult choices, even when they come at a huge personal cost.
She chooses herself. And that decision to leave Thornfield takes her into the unknown, a journey that really tests her resilience. And ultimately, it brings her face to face with a very different kind of man, St. John Rivers.
When we left off, Jane was fleeing heartbreak, right? Heading into a very uncertain future.
Yeah, and her journey from Thornfield is rough. It really highlights how vulnerable a woman alone could be back then in Victorian society.
Brontë doesn't hold back, does she? Jane's destitute, wandering on the moors, no shelter, barely scraping by.
It's a true test of her strength, both physically and emotionally.
Stripped of everything, facing her own mortality.
And then she finds Morehouse. What a change from Thornfield.
Right. Thornfield, all Gothic shadows and secrets, and then Morehouse. So stark, austere.
And that feeling, you get it from St. John Rivers too, the man who takes Jane in.
He's an interesting character, so driven by duty, by his faith.
Yeah, but there's that coldness too, nothing like Rochester's passion.
Like a granite pillar, you said it, unyielding.
I wonder, was that stability what Jane needed after Thornfield? I mean, after all that chaos.
Good point. Maybe she craves some predictability.
But then he proposes, and it's not out of love, is it?
No, it's admiration, respect for her mind, but no warmth there.
He'd have her as a tool for his mission work.
Exactly. It makes you think, what is true love? What should we sacrifice for duty, for faith?
Jane sees it, though, doesn't she? Tempted by a life of service, but...
But I mean losing herself.
Exactly. And then that moment, the voice calling her back to Rochester.
Gives me chills every time. So gothic, supernatural.
But it shows how connected they are, beyond reason.
The heart wants what it wants, right? So she goes back. And Thornfield's a ruin.
That image, the grand house destroyed, it's like all that's been lost.
The consequences laid bare.
But they find each other.
Rochester, blind, broken, so sad.
But there's tenderness now.
And it's Jane who's strong.
I will be your eyes and hands, she says.
Wow. Love, but equality too.
Happy ending. Not so simple.
Right. Scars remain. Can love rebuild that? Honesty, respect, can they last?
Jane Eyre makes you think, no easy answers.
Love, forgiveness, the human spirit. Brontë was a genius.
It stays with you, this story. What do you take from Jane's journey? What echoes in your life? That's what makes this book so powerful.
Powerful and worth revisiting again and again.
Thanks for joining us in this deep dive. See you next time.
Until then.